Hi everyone, my name is Emily and today we're going to be doing Morse code converter step and we're going to code a Morse code converter. Today I'm also joined by special guest Nika. Say hi.
Hey everybody.
All right, let's get started. So let's go over the steps. You can read out the story if you want. We made a little story for you guys, but we're going to do the standard thing. We're going to run git pull and create a new branch called Morse. So git pull. All right, we have some new stuff in there. Let's clear that out. And let's check out with a new branch called Morse. Okay. So now that we're in our new branch, we can install the Morse code converter package. But before I do that, I'm actually going to create the function first because we are going to use an Azure function.
If you haven't, oh wait, I'm wait.
Oh,
my
were you
mic's
gonna
way
make a
down.
comment?
Oh yeah, sorry. By the way, my mic's been way down. I have not been giving you the silent treatment for the last 5 minutes. But I just want to say, if you haven't heard of Morse code, folks, just go look it up on Wikipedia. You can learn a little bit about it.
Yes.
It's one of the first ways to be code information being transmitted across a wire.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And even though it just looks like dots and lines, there's actually a lot of history behind it, right?
Yeah, and it's still it's not used anyplace commercially anymore. It was last used in 2008, so that's pretty
Wow.
extreme. But yeah, it still can be absolutely useful as a human understandable way to communicate where you can only make one signal. So you can only turn a light off or on or something. Morse is still useful.
Binary. And probably the most famous example you might know is just SOS.
People still, yeah, like you might recognize the tones of SOS going off, but yeah, when people had the first wireless radios, they still used Morse to communicate. But yeah, there's a great book on the history of Morse code. Oh, I'm blanking on the name. I'll find it by the end of this
Yeah,
thing. We'll put it in the show notes.
I'll put it in the link in the description. Put a link in the description below. So yeah. All right. So what was I doing? Oh yeah, I was going to create an Azure function. So you can go over to the Azure tab, just click, let's create a new one. All right, HTTP trigger. And I think what are we going to call it? I think we're just calling it Morse. Yep, we're calling it Morse. And we can just set it at function authorization level. All right, so we have our new Morse Azure function. And like we said before, we are going to install the new npm package that we're going to use. So npm install, as always copy paste everything, because last time I tried installing this, I used an O instead of an E somewhere and it didn't work. All right, so I have installed that. So let's see what our next step is. So we're going to code an HTTP trigger function named Morse with the npm package, and it takes in a plain text parameter, which is in English, and then returns a response of Morse code. So this is a relatively simple little program, but it reviews everything that we've done this week. We've already installed our packages. If you don't understand npm packages quite yet, you can go over that again. But they're basically a way for you to use other people's code and import them into yours. So if you ever used Python before, probably use packages. And they're just ways for you to not have to completely reinvent the wheel, because there's a lot of things that have been done before and they're all packaged up and nice and ready to use. Nika, do you have any comments on npm packages?
No, I mean, that kind of dependency management is pretty basic to building, real world software applications. I'd say sometimes it can surprise you what you're using a package for. You think like, oh, that's pretty simple. But remember that every line of code you write is one that you also have to maintain. And so even a very, very simple thing, like for example, this Morse code converter is something you will probably write as a project in a year or two, very, very easily, but you still have to maintain that code. So having another maintainer who's doing updates to that package is actually better than writing it yourself. So
yeah, that's a great point. So how are we going to actually go about doing this? Well, the first thing, you should probably import the package first. You got to import it before you can even use it. I'm going to import it at the top right here. And I don't know why that did not copy paste. Let me copy paste that again. All right. Paste. So now that we've imported it, we can go ahead and receive the English as a parameter. If you forgot, we provided the syntax for you. It would be rec.query.plaintext. This would access the plaintext parameter from the request that the user is sending. Let's delete all of this because we're not going to need to use this template. And I'm just going to call this English equals rec.query.plaintext. And now we're going to have to read some documentation. I would recommend you do this. Get practice reading documentation, because when you're using APIs, you're going to need to read a lot of it. I've opened it up over here in this tab. And in this case, this package is very easy to use. As you can see here, we've already required the package. And now we are going to convert from English to Morse code. So we're going to be using this line. So we're inputting English in the parameter, and then we are going to be receiving Morse code back. So right here, I've copy pasted that in. You're going to need to change the parameter because we just accessed it from the parameter sent in from the user. And I'm just going to put that as English. Okay. Yeah.
I don't love English as the name of the variable, but that's a totally a personal thing.
What would you set it at? Let's see. What would
you? English query is probably what I would put
English it. Query, got it.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind that? Is it just a
just like think of a variable. I think of a variable as a label on a box, right?
Yeah.
And if someone had a box that said English on the side, I wouldn't expect there to be like a note, or like a single post-it on the side that said, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'd be like, "Oh, that was somehow that felt weird to me."
I get that. I see where you're coming from now, because if I think about English like that, I'm like, well, is this like a whole language object? Okay, yeah.
Right. I would expect like other languages to be there for sure or something, but again, totally a personal thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this is a good opportunity to bring up that it's always important to comment in your code, like tell people what your variables are.
So a comment right above English to say what I mean is this is the English string that comes in is actually more important than sitting around and worrying about the variable name, because variable names are always going to get obscure like as time goes forward, right?
Yeah.
Even in Java land, where people have like 64 word long variable names, they still will get obscure eventually.
Definitely. All right. There is an option here. You can add in some checking user input validation. And what that means is if you're checking if the user actually inputted something. So in case that they didn't, the program will give feedback instead of just crashing. Like, let's say you were signing into a website and you entered the wrong password. You don't want the entire site to just crash because you entered the wrong password. You want the website to tell you that you entered the wrong thing and you should probably do it again. So that's exactly what we can do right here. This is a very simple if statement. It's basically saying if the plain text, and we're going to have to change these variables around because we named it English instead. If English is undefined or English is just null, there's nothing inside, we're going to set the code to please enter some text to convert. We're basically returning the user, hey, you didn't put anything in, so put something in the variable. And then we're going to add this else statement after, because we do want to convert it if they did put something in. And spacing, let me format this. There we go. So we would want to convert the English input into Morse. So now that we have our code variable here, though, one thing that's important to note, you have to declare code. So var code equals no, nothing. Well, that's not null, it's a blank string. I just want to
otherwise we'll get back right that like that code reference that we made doesn't exist. So
exactly, because you haven't defined where code is in the memory yet. You can't just say, hey, there's this code thing.
Yeah, please JavaScript forgets a lot, but not that.
All right. Let's see. So that's what our full if statement looks like. And last part, we are finally returning what the user actually wants, which is the Morse code. And very simple. Let's just go ahead and we're going to put the variable code right there. All right, Nico, does everything look good to you? I think it looks good to you.
We're returning code. Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, we
Okay,
declare
let's go
code
ahead
in the scope where we're able to call it again. Yeah, we should be good.
Awesome. So also you don't have to run the entire program through your head every single time. It's totally fine to just let the computer find errors instead of you having to run it. But sometimes it's just easier to give it a once over so you don't make dumb mistakes. Let's go ahead and start up the local testing. All right. And I'm going to open this up. Okay, I think I actually found a problem. So I have another Azure function over here that's the timer trigger, which you'll do in the later weeks. But since it is a timer trigger, it's messing with my ability to test the other. See right there, I come up. It's messing with my ability to be able to test the other HTTP triggers. So I'm going to pause the video and fix that, and I'll be right back.
Be right back. During the pandemic.
All right, I'm back. I basically just deleted the function to solve that issue. So now that we have it up and running, you can go ahead and open it in a new tab. So if you don't put anything in the parameter, this is what you're going to get. Please enter some text to convert. And if you look back at your code, that's exactly what the program is supposed to do. It's supposed to validate whether or not you actually put anything in there, so it doesn't just crash and you don't know what's going on. I'm going to add in a plain text parameter. And let's call it Nika. And voila, this is Nika's name in Morse code, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah, let's put an SOS. Oops. That's probably what you've seen a lot. SOS, 3 letters. Okay, so I think we're ready to commit now and deploy. So as always, what were you gonna say?
Oh, 2 things. 1, this looks good. 2, if you're struggling to get those queries entered into a URL bar like that, do think of grabbing a program like Postman, which has a nice like text box for you to put in queries. But this works great too. It's just like if you're doing like 6 queries, think about getting Postman.
Yeah.
Formatting a really long string.
We use Postman. We introduced Postman in week 2, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
so if you're curious about that, we are introducing it next week. So you can always look at those videos. But definitely like
sorry folks. Sorry for this chilling vision of the future.
Exactly. It's fine. It's not very chilling. It's actually very helpful. But yeah, like Nika said, for multiple parameters, it's going to be very tedious if you just enter them by hand. So Postman also helps with a lot of other things when you're working with APIs, which you're going to learn next week. Now back to the present. Let's go ahead and deploy this. And as always, we will be back after this finishes deploying.
Wait,
all right, we're back. So now that it's finished deploying, let me go ahead as always, just commit everything. Create. Right, now that we've committed it, let's go ahead and create a new pull request. Oh, wait, before we, I just made a mistake. I just realized we never put the endpoint in GitHub before we committed. So now the bot's going to try to check an empty URL, but that's okay because this is a good lesson actually, because we can show you how you can rerun checks in GitHub so that the bot checks it again in case you make a mistake like this. So let's just finish making our pull request, and then we can look at how we can fix this issue. So, Morse function. Change is made. A Morse converter. What's in the secret? And let me just create that. Now, when we create it, we're probably going to see that, there we go, it failed. Morse build failed because we did not take this step. I did not read all the instructions. So Morse endpoint. Let's do that. And
so now you know as a student, if you mess this up 11 times, it's like, yes, this happens to us all.
yes, it happens. I do this way too often. I also forget to deploy the function and then I get confused about why it didn't work. So
every time, for me, every time. Like
if you've done it,
I forget to save the changes I made to the file and then deploy changes without it saved. Then I save it, then I go and test it, and then I forget that I did not actually deploy the changes.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So now that I'm in my Azure portal, I can go to my functions and then I can copy the Morse URL. So I copy it. Let's just shove it in here. Add secret. Okay. Let's go to pull request. So the way you can rerun a function, rerun a check by the bot is if you click on details, you can see that it failed on sub 12. You can click rerun all jobs. Let's rerun it. And the bot is basically go ahead and run the check again. And since there's now a URL in there, it's going to be able to hopefully pass the check. And let's go back to the pull request to wait for that to happen. All right, so now the bot has successfully checked our code. Now it's time for you to fill out the week 1 video feedback to let us know how we're doing and what you think we could add or subtract from this video series. That's it for week 1. So congratulations on making it through the first week. And we'll see you in week 2 for APIs and even more interesting stuff. And there's also cats in week 2. So more cats.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye.